John Lynch, what are you doing with Jimmy Garoppolo? Find out next. All right, welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And tonight, we still don't have a name for the show. People gave suggestions. We're just going to keep rolling with it as is. I got my guy next to me to the right, Mr. Suneil from So Real Sports Talk. What's up, my guy? How you doing?
We out here dancing in the streets, man. My Twitter feels like Last Second Sports Twitter lately, man. I got open it up and there's just a whole bunch of people screaming at me, a whole bunch of people saying I don't know nothing about football, and I love it. Bring it. I bring it.
You want all the smoke, man.
I love it, bro.
The Twitter chaos is fun to me. Like, people are like, "Oh my god!" Like, how do you take it? It's like, I don't know. I just mute most of the conversations. I light a fire and walk away. It's pretty simple, actually. Pretty simple. And every once in a while, I'll respond. But yeah, listen. So we were going to talk about some players for the 49ers, whether they're going to stay or go. One of the guys on this list was K'Waun Williams, who just signed with, I don't know, the Denver 49ers right out there. Well, actually, they're the Denver NFC West because they also got Russell Wilson. So the Denver AFC or NFC West, rather, signed K'Waun Williams to a 2-year deal. So he's not going to be back. We pretty much expected that. But there are some other free agents that the 49ers have. Some key names, really, pun intended. Arden Key, we'll start with him. He's got visits with the Detroit Lions and Jacksonville Jaguars. Do you think that Key stays or goes?
I think it depends on the money that is offered, right? I'm sure Arden Key has a number or a type of contract that he believes he wants to get. And if he gets those numbers, I think he's gone. But if he doesn't get those numbers, I could see him coming back on a 1-year deal with the 49ers, knowing that DJ Jones is gone and that, he would get maybe a more significant role and build up his portfolio even more and, go out next year where all the money goes up and get those type of numbers. So I think it really depends on what he's offered. If he gets something that blows him out of the water, he'll probably walk. If not, I could see him coming back on a 1-year deal. Because I think, like somebody just mentioned, I think he's looking to get paid.
Yeah, I think he's looking to get paid too. I actually thought he would play this thing a little bit smarter. I do think he's gone now that he's taking visits. Most likely those teams are going to offer him more than what the 49ers are willing to do so, especially with Jimmy on the roster. They can only afford so much. But I really thought Arden Key, if you listen to one of his final press conferences, he had talked about finally being in a place that took care of its players and was about winning, and how that made him feel comfortable. And with the salary cap going up as much as it is next year, I thought his better bet, if I was his agent, I would say, listen, stay with San Francisco. Obviously, health is always a risk, but we know that you're going to produce there. Your numbers got better throughout the season. You've got a defined role now going forward. You've got Chris Kosaric there, who's a wizard. Not only is he going to make you better, but they're going to make you look better there with Bosa. Then what you can do after having 2 good seasons, next year hit the open market and really cash in. And I felt like that was a way for him to get more money if he had gone that route. And I actually thought that was the route he was going to take, just by the way that he had been speaking about the situation. But seeing that he's getting these visits, you can't be mad at him. And it's totally understandable. Sometimes you only have one chance to get paid. Maybe he has a down year. Maybe he gets injured, what have you. If he can make a few million on the open market, you kind of got to take it. And I expect that's probably going to be the situation. Most likely he is going to be gone. But let's move into some guys that we really haven't heard anything about. One of them, running back Jeff Wilson Jr. Obviously, Mostert's gone. There have been some rumblings about Melvin Gordon. Supposedly, he's following the 49ers on social media, stopped following the Broncos, whatever that means. I mean, we thought Zach Wilson was going to be a 49er based off of who he was and wasn't following last offseason.
Right.
So maybe it means something, maybe it doesn't, who knows. But what about Jeff Wilson Jr.? Do you think that he's back or do you think that he's gone?
Yeah, so right now with the 49er running back room, they have two guys that are for sure there, right?
Yep.
In Elijah Mitchell, Trey Sermon.
Well,
And
three,
then
Hasty as well.
and Hasty, right? That's what I mean. So three. So last year they carried five, and then Juszczyk was the sixth, right? So that means there's two extra spots available for running backs, and I don't believe they're going to bring both in free agency. I think that they're going to draft somebody just because they do so well with one of those lower round, 6th round, 7th round undrafted type picks to bring a guy in. So I really think there's going to be one position left. And do I think it'll be Jeff Wilson Jr.? I would say no. And the reason why is because the 49ers dealt with so many injuries last season. I think they want to bring somebody in that, is a little bit more reliable. And Jeff Wilson didn't get a lot of run even last year. We thought he was going to get the ball a lot more. It seems like Kyle Shanahan wasn't, as in love with him as we thought he might be. I could see a guy maybe like Wayne Gallman be brought in over Jeff Wilson just because he's probably going to be a lot less money and, play a role that is needed because whomever that running back they bring in most likely isn't going to see the ball a lot. It's going to be just more, if Mitchell or Sermon go down, they'll get the ball. So, yeah, I could see Jeff Wilson leaving the team and the 49ers going after another veteran to replace him.
What do you feel about Melvin Gordon? Would you be happy with him?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the money, right? Like if he's coming just for the min, I don't think he's going to contend for a role. I really would like Mitchell and Trey Sermon to get the bulk of the handoffs. So if he comes in, I think he has, he obviously understands Anthony Lynn system. So maybe that would be good as far as that. But I would imagine he wants to play in a tandem where he's going to get a lot of the ball. I just don't see that happening with the 49ers. So I don't know if that would be a good fit for him.
Let me see. So he had 203 carries last year, played 16 games. It's amazing. Using the calculator is really tough nowadays. He had, you're right. I mean, he had almost 13 carries a game last year.
Yeah.
So that's quite a bit. And obviously there's probably not a role like that carved out in the 49ers offense. So maybe Melvin Gordon isn't a fit unless, but Anthony Lynn is the new run game coordinator. Right. So, maybe he does things a little bit different. I also think that they probably learned a little bit, watching, what's his name? Running back. God, why am I drawing a blank? Elijah Mitchell. Yeah. Watching Elijah Mitchell break down a little bit for them last year because they ran him through the wall, man. I couldn't believe how much they ran that poor kid. So, maybe they do come up with some sort of split, but I agree. I don't think Wilson's back. For whatever reason, they kind of fell out of love with him. And maybe he was a little bit more injured than what we thought. And he is going to be healthier. And so they do bring him back. I actually like Jeff Wilson a lot. I thought he should have been the third down back based off of his blocking ability, his catching ability. I thought over Hasty, he should have been the guy, and he just wasn't. That's kind of what his role was prior. And then obviously he took off a little bit with Mostert getting injured, namely the Patriots game in 2020. So, yeah, I don't know. I would like to have Wilson back. I think he'll be extremely cheap. He knows the system, but I tend to agree he's probably not going to come back. He's not necessarily like a special teams guy either, so that makes it a little bit tough. Jason Verrett. Now, I know we've talked about him in the past. What are your thoughts? Do you think they bring him back? Should they bring him back?
Yeah, I think they should, and they probably will. I think one thing that Jason Verrett has to give to this team is they've been extremely patient and treated him really well, right? He hasn't played a lot for the 49ers, but the 49ers have kept him on the roster, kept paying him, kept giving him a shot. So I do believe that he comes back to this team on, a 1-year type prove it deal. And why I think it would be beneficial for the 49ers is just because this would be the first time where they truly don't need him, right? They have 3 guys that play the position that he would play and play it at a very high level. So they can bring him in and ease him in. And then later on in the season where he really showed out in 2020 and really kind of like, that's where everybody on the 49ers got really excited about him going into the 2021 season. It's a similar type thing that they could do this year. And I think for Jason Verrett, who most likely understands that he needs to string together some good football to be able to make any type of money moving forward in the league, being in a situation where he isn't necessarily going to be relied on, but can still be showcased is probably a really win-win situation for him. And I just think the 49ers are the best situation for him based off of where he's at and what he's looking to gain probably in the future.
The Verrett situation is funny to me because I actually didn't want them to bring Verrett back. I was pretty bullish on them not doing so, just because these injury-prone guys, I didn't want them taking up roster spots, what have you. But now that they've brought in Ward, I'm more comfortable with it. And I'm actually rooting for it to happen because now he's like the 4th guy, right?
Right.
And he's 5'8", 5'9", whatever. Maybe he can play a little nickel. Maybe, he can win one of the outside jobs because he is very talented. Like that much is clear. It's just the injury history. But when this dude plays, he's really, really good. So, as the
Jesse,
4th option.
Didn't mean to cut you off, but if he's healthy, he might be the best cornerback we have on the team, right?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, he could win a starting job. He may play nickel, what have you. I don't know, but I'm all for it because the upside would be so massive. The downside at this point, as your 4th option, not that big of a deal. I mean, who was option number 4 last year? Trey Kirkpatrick. Like, you know what I mean?
Johnson, right? I think Dante Johnson, maybe.
Dante's good. Dante, by the way, I would let he needs.
I would
to
like
stay
to bring him back too.
Yeah, he definitely needs to stay because he was a jack of all trades. He turned into a little bit of everything. People sleep on Dante Johnson, but look at what he did. He was playing safety. He was playing nickel. He was playing outside. One game, he played all those positions, did them well. So for me, like those are guys that you want on your team. And I would say yes to Verrett at this point, especially if you can get him for like $1 million. Do it. It's totally worth it. Niner by Nature says, my man, Jesse, thank you for your existence here. Take my money. Well, I would say thank my parents. They probably had more to do with it than I did. But I appreciate it for sure. Let me give you some love back, man. Thanks.
Bro, you have guys just throwing you change right now, bro.
God, dude, I don't know how to feel about this. I don't know if I should feel good about this.
On a Taco Tuesday, you just got close to $10, bro. That's like what, 20 tacos at the right place?
That's hey, good food truck, man. That'll keep you on the toilet for a couple days. I might not be doing a show tomorrow at this pace. Let me give you some love too, Edgardo. All right. Last but not least, this one is the one that I think people go back and forth with on the, probably the most. For me, I talked about not wanting to bring him back, but also kind of being the most on the fence with him as well. And that's Jaquiski Tartt. Again, these other safeties have moved, like pretty much all of them, other than Honey Badger. Obviously, these two are not in the same class. We'll see what the market is for Tartt, but do you believe that Tartt's back or do you think he's gone?
Yeah, and same thing. I think Tartt is another guy, just like we mentioned with Key, that's really looking for a big payout. So it's going to be based off of the numbers. And I just feel like I was just talking about this on Jack's show. He always seems to pick the worst years to become a free agent, right? And I think that once again, he came out in a market where The draft seems like it's very deep for the safety position. There were a lot of safeties on the market. A guy like Honey Badger is out there, so people are looking towards him more than a guy like Tartt. So I could see Tartt coming back on another 1-year deal where he could really showcase in a system where he does play very well in, especially with a guy like Ward that they just have unreal chemistry and play really well. And where you say, him and Honey Badger aren't on the same like caliber of player, maybe on their own, but when it comes to this system, Tartt is damn near perfect for what they need for what for the position that he plays in this system. And I just think that he probably sees the writing on the wall. And if he comes back on another 1-year deal, plays well, stays healthy, because he stayed relatively healthy last season. If he could string together 2 seasons where he's playing 16 plus games, come the next year, he should be in for a bigger payday. So that's the way I look at it with him.
Yeah, I am. I'm on the fence with it, but I do tend to agree with this comment here. James says, I think Tartt's gone. I see us drafting and letting a starter play on camp. And that's kind of where I'm at with it. Let's also not forget that Moore is still out there. He was injured all of last year. I do think they're probably going to draft a guy and go a little bit younger in the secondary, which I'm, by the way, all for. I think getting younger in the secondary is like that probably more so than any other position, or any other position group rather, is like that's the most athletic people in the world. You have to be so athletic. And last year I complained about it because everybody was like at 30 or older. Like they were all approaching 30. Like this doesn't seem good other than Mosley. And sure enough, obviously Tartt, missed a couple games. Ward even missed a game. K1 did what K1 does, and Verrett hardly even played. So, it's one of those things where as you get older, the less healthy you're going to be. And all these guys were a little bit long in the tooth. So I'm probably for him leaving. I do think he's going to be gone. I think that there's this draft, especially right where they're going to be picking, they could go edge or safety and make out like bandits. Like I think that they're going to have a hell of a choice there, depending on who they like at either one of those positions, because I think both positions are very, very deep, and they can find their guy if they absolutely need one in either role. So I think that's probably the route that they're going to take. What do you think? Any chance like that they do go safety in the draft early on and kind of bypass Tartt? What are your thoughts?
I was just talking. I think we've talked about this too. I think this is the first year since Kyle Shanahan and Lynch have been able to draft. So this is their 6th draft. I think this is the first year where they could truly go best player available, because they've built this roster so well. There isn't any like glaring needs. So I don't think they reach for anybody. I think they really let other teams that are trying to be aggressive make mistakes, and they can go and, capitalize on some of these other teams that are making ridiculous trades to go reach for a player and let the right type of player fall to them, even if it isn't a player of quote unquote need, because they don't have one. And I think, the fact that they can go safety in this draft makes me believe that they could bring Tartt back for a year, have him be the starter, let this guy kind of play spot duty if and when he does get injured, and kind of ease somebody in versus need somebody to be a starter right away. So that's why I think Tartt on a 1-year deal would be advantageous to everybody.
Okay, yeah, I'm with it. I'm not totally against it. For me, I don't know, man. Tartt,
like, where's he going? Right?
I don't. Yeah, but that's the thing, right? Like that's kind of where I'm at. Like I don't know where he's gonna end up, but also like I'm just gonna say it. I think people overrate Tartt personally. Like Tartt's cool. Like don't get me wrong, Tartt is a good player. I'm not trying to say he's not a good player. He's certainly, a good safety, especially with Ward in this system. But I think that there's too much love for this guy, and especially for a lot of guys that have befriended him. I totally understand that. You're friends with Tartt, whatever. But these people hype him up like this man is God in cleats playing safety for the 49ers. Like he's cool, but he ain't that good. Like he's replaceable is basically what I'm saying. So unless this guy's coming back for dirt cheap, like I'm good letting Tartt walk. Like Tartt, 1 turnover in 3 years. I think he's got 3 interceptions in his career. Like, come on, man. This guy's not a ball hawk by any means. He does his job for sure, but if I'm gonna like bring in a veteran safety, I want somebody that's gonna go out and give me the ball, right? And so for me, I just feel like getting younger in that position going forward, because it's not just him. You've got Ward that's also getting a little bit older as well. Now I know safeties can play till their mid 30s depending on play style and what they're asked to do and what have you. But you don't want 2 guys that are approaching that age together. Like you got to get a replacement for one of them and lock that down. So I don't know. We'll see what they do. I'm not completely against bringing Tartt back, but I'm also not really fully for it. So I think draft a safety, go that route, get an edge rusher later, whatever they decide to do. But I'm really liking some of the safeties in this draft. Like some of them are starting to show out in their pro days, do some really big things after already putting on good film. And I think that these guys can come in and play right away and be an impact player. So Tommy Huxley, I don't know exactly what this means, but he says everyone quit crying in the breast milk. Jimbo's gone. We're going to talk about that a little bit later because I'm not so sure about that. We'll talk about it. Appreciate you though, Tommy, holding it down in the chat. Also an admin. Appreciate that. Yeah, people are asking about Teron Armstead. He, by the way, $17 million a year is what this guy got paid. Like that was dirt cheap.
Right.
That dude's a really good tackle. Really, really good tackle. Arguably, I don't know, I'd say top 3 left tackle in the game. 17 million a year. It's not a lot. It's really not a lot. So
especially out there in Miami, because he's gonna keep all that money. So I like what Miami's doing, man. I like what McDaniel's doing over there.
I do too, for sure. No, they're definitely doing a good job. All right, let's get into this next topic. So obviously way too early. We haven't even had the draft, but I think that people get locked in, and understandably so. You get locked in on your team, what they're doing, what they're not doing, and you kind of sell things short based off of what you're not seeing them do. And that's what we're hearing with the 49ers, right? Oh my gosh, they've only brought in Ward and they let these other guys walk. And why is Jimmy on the roster? You know, they have so much money just waiting to be spent. But really, if you look across the landscape of the NFC, things are looking really good for the 49ers. So where do you see the 49ers as it stands today in the NFC? If you were to rank top 3 teams in the NFC, are they there? Do they rank 1, 2, 3, 5? Like, where do you have them?
Yeah, so let's just talk about, just put it into perspective based off of, let's go the top 7 from last year, right? So the number 1 team was Green Bay. Did they get better? Did they get worse this offseason? Well, you lost your number 1 weapon on offense. You most likely got worse, right? Then who was 2? Tampa Bay, or was it the Rams? Rams, you know, they lost. I think it was
Tampa. It was Tampa because Tampa had a home game against the Rams.
Right. So Tampa pretty much stayed pat, I think. So I would say they're still there, and, you know, they'd still be top 3. Rams, even though they lost, you know, some guys, they lost their, you know, some big pieces on the offensive line. They lost Von Miller, but they picked up, you know, a really good receiver in Allen Robinson. You know, they're coming off of the Super Bowl high. So I would still say, you know, maybe they're at pat, but maybe a little bit worse, but I would still put them in the top 3. Cardinals, their defense has gotten worse, I would say. You know, who else was there? Dallas, they're imploding, right?
I don't know if you caught this on Twitter, but one of the guys on Twitter that I mess with, Chris, he was actually on Croc Show to preview the Dallas 49er playoff game. He actually rescinded his fandom to Dallas, wrote a whole letter and everything, put it out on Twitter, and he's now a Charger fan. The funniest thing I've ever seen. 49ers beat Dallas's brains out, and they're literally making lifelong fans switch teams. That's how good this
It's
is.
great.
So
It's
yeah, it was
great.
pretty funny.
Yeah, and then the Eagles, I think they have gotten better, but not significantly to the point where they're going to turn into a threat. So there are some teams that I think got better. I think Washington's going to be a little bit better. I think the Vikings they'll figure some things out. But based off of just the top 7, the 49ers, I believe, have at least stayed the same, if not got a little bit better, plugging up some holes in special teams and gotten younger in positions of need. So I believe they are top 3. I don't know if I could automatically put them over the Rams and Tampa Bay right away, but I do think they're not too far off if they're not even there neck and neck. So especially, and it all comes down to how well we believe what kind of leap Trey takes in his second season. If he just plays, similar to Jimmy, like just consistent type of quarterback play, I think they're top 3. If he takes a leap that we think he has the capability of doing, I think they're the best team in the NFC. So I have them strongly there in the top 3, and I believe another deep playoff push is my expectations for this team.
Absolutely. Miliano, don't do that. That's how rumors start. It says, hey, everyone, Jesse's trying to say Tartt isn't a good player. Definitely didn't say that, but that is really funny. But but thank you, because you've definitely started a rumor for sure. I'm sure that's going to be everywhere. Niner by Nature says Leon O'Neal Jr. or Smoke Monday. I'll also throw in Nick Cross's name. Nick Cross, to me, might be the best out of all of them. He's a really, really good player. Go check him out if you have not done so. But I think that those are all viable options at safety to replace Ward for sure. I agree with you, Suneil. I think there's certainly top 3. Cardinals, like you said, lost a significant piece, losing Chandler Jones. Back-to-back years, they lost Reddick, then Jones. That's huge, right? Not only that, but there's just a lot of turmoil inside that organization right now, which is a good thing for the 49ers. Obviously, Russell Wilson is gone. So to me, it's going to come down to the 49ers and the Rams fighting for that number 1 seed now. The division, not necessarily the number 1 seed. Tampa Bay is probably going to be the number 1 seed. Let's be real. Tampa Bay is really, really good. And Tom Brady coming back, doing what Tom Brady does, recruiting everybody, making that team good again. Tampa Bay's probably the best team right now to me. Then I would say it's a toss-up between the 49ers and Rams. The Rams, I think, have gotten a little bit worse. I know that they brought in, the glitz and glamour wide receiver position, but they also had to trade Robert Woods, who's a really, really good player, hell of a blocker, definitely a weapon for that team. They got rid of him. They lost their left tackle, lost some special teams guys. So I don't know if they're necessarily better. And by the way, they don't have a first, second, or a third unless they've got a compensatory pick in the third that I don't know about. But it's going to be hard for them to fill some of those spots. I imagine that they'll be fine, but I think the 49ers may have passed them. Special teams is a big one. To me, I know it's not flashy. Maybe you're quote unquote overpaying for some of these guys. You're not getting big name players, but to go out and get 3 guys specifically that play special teams tells me that you care about that unit. And it is essentially 1/3 of the game. Now, for the 49ers, fortunately for them, it won them a divisional game against the Packers, right? We saw how bad the Packers were, one of the few teams that were actually worse than the 49ers. And the 49ers were able to come out and get a win based off special teams. So it could certainly win you or lose you some games. It is an important phase that people overlook. And the fact that they've gone out and spent some money there, that's encouraging. So they've gotten better there. They've gotten better defensively. Now it just comes down to the offense. Yes, they've lost some pieces along the offensive line. How will they replace them? Either through the rest of free agency or the draft. But also Trey Lance versus Jimmy G. What is the difference there? I think that it's good enough that they're probably slightly better on offense as well. The only really place that I think they've taken a step back is continuity in the coaching staff. I think that's something that we might be overlooking. Yes, they've brought in a lot of good coaches, big names, guys who are going to be looking for head coaching jobs over the next few years. but ultimately there is a lack of continuity that they are going to have going forward. That could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. We'll see how it plays out. But I think the 49ers are probably a little bit better on paper, obviously on paper now, before the draft, even than what they were last year. And I think that's a great spot to be, watching everybody else take a major backslide.
And can I tell you why the special teams to me is so important and why I'm extremely excited about what the 49ers really bringing in some assets for that. A lot of people
Yeah,
don't
absolutely.
realize how close this team was to being like a 14 win team. The 49ers lost, I think it was like 5 or 6 games by one possession. And the special teams, especially with the guy like Ray McLeod, who was top 8 in every single category when it comes to return yards. I think he was number 1 in total return yards, punt return yards, and he averaged like 23, 24 yards per kick return yards. So when we're talking about one possession being the difference between a win and a loss, a couple plays on special teams where the return team can maybe get an extra first down for Trey Lance, like get an extra 10 or 20 yards so that it's a shorter field that they could get into field goal range much quicker, or score a touchdown, or the return teams, like the defensive side, are able to pin the ball back deeper, more consistently. These are the type of like, to take a line from any given Sunday, it's a game of inches, right? Like what Pacino was saying. Like, those are the type of moves that I think go under the radar. They're not the big splashes, the big type of names, but I think that those 3 players that were brought in specifically for special teams, Jesse, are going to add another 2-3 wins to the 49ers, where now they could be a 12-13 win team, and fend for maybe home field advantage through the playoffs, which they were a couple games away from this season, just because on those game of inches they were losing those inches instead of gaining those inches. So I think it's a big deal that they went out and and spent so much money on special teams, and I believe it's going to pay dividends over the course of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also Ray McLeod could have a hand in this offense. He does have a little bit of a fumbling thing from what I understand. They'll have to get that under control. But he actually went to school here in Tampa and held running back records for many, many years out here. So he was a running back in high school, maybe
Another wide
WRB2. Yeah,
back.
there we
Wide
go.
back.
That's what I'm saying. So who knows, right? Like, Shanahan can get really creative. Plus, he can take the top off a little bit. So, I don't know. We'll see about that. I wanted to address this comment because I actually just did a film review of Kirby Joseph, so it caught my eye. And then I'll get back to you, Aaron. Thank you so much for the super chat, by the way. Tom Jensen says Cross had a great interview with Washington. They might take him at 47. Yeah, that could be a possibility for sure. Kirby Joseph is my choice. 5 picks in 12 games, top vertical, long rangey hitter. O'Neal, 23.5 missed tackle rate. Nope. Yeah, O'Neal for me, iffy. He also didn't fare well. I think it was either the shuttle 3 cone. I don't remember. I have to go look at it, but had some issues there. Kirby Joseph is interesting because everything I read about him was glowing. But I watched 2 games of his. Now, I get it. 2 games, we can go however we want with that. That's a small sample size overall. But I did watch 2 games. I did a film breakdown of him. So if you are a member of the channel, you can actually see that. There is a section right there below the video where you can join, $5 a month, and you can actually check that out. But to me, Kirby Joseph, I wasn't that impressed. He was cool. Like, don't get me wrong, he was cool. And what I did like about him is that they had him playing single high an awful lot, which means they trusted him. But I didn't think that, like, to me, until maybe it was like the end of one of the games and like towards the middle part of another, I felt like he was avoiding hitting people. Like, he would let other people make the play. And that's just the feeling I got by watching it. There was times where he could stick his nose in and get a little bit dirty, and he decided not to do that. Now, again, them trusting him to play single high, I thought was cool. that does talk about his ability, but I want somebody that's at least willing to hit somebody. And to me, I didn't think he played that fast either. Like I watched him and I didn't go, oh man, this kid is all over the place. He'd be in the middle of the field and he would let things go on either side because he would choose wrong, couldn't get back, whatever. I don't know. I'm sure Kirby Joseph will be fine. Maybe I watched some bad games, came away with the wrong impression, but I actually thought Petrie, who is somebody that I was uber confused by because I was told he's a safety, but I watched him play that star role for Baylor. Never was in a single or dual high, but based off of what I saw with his skill set, I would actually probably go Petrie over Joseph. And I had a lot of questions when it came to Petrie. So I don't know. We'll see what direction they decide to go if they decide to take one of these guys. But to me, Kirby Joseph, I just thought that there was more to be desired. That's just me personally. Aaron says, damn, Jesse, I figured the last time that I streamed with you, we'd be rid of the Jimmy circus. Yeah, man, me too. What an epic failure by Lynch in the front office. Well, we're going to talk about that here in just a second. But let me show you some love. Appreciate you, Aaron. Thanks. Hey, I think Tom was the one that brought up the
Yeah, he just became a new member too.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Tom. I appreciate that, man. Maybe you'll see what I was seeing from the film review and be able to break it down. So let me know what I missed. I'm all ears for sure. Okay, let's see. Let's get in to the meat and potatoes because everybody wants to know about Jimmy G, and we're gonna get there overall, but I think the 49ers are going to make the wrong decision again, Suneil. I really do. I know I was yanking your chain yesterday on your stream. Said the 5 stages of grief. You were in the acceptance stage, right. But I think you might be onto something here, and we're gonna talk through it. Not only where they stand with Jimmy Garoppolo, but kind of how they got here and why I don't trust the 49ers to make the right decision. I don't know. Did you ever read the Choose Your Own Adventure books when you were a kid, Suneil?
Goosebumps? Come on, baby. Of course I did.
Okay.
I had a childhood, my man. I had a childhood.
All right. Well, listen, I mean, some of us didn't. I don't know. All right. Yeah. So choose your own adventure books, right? Like you could choose your own adventure. You basically would get to a page and would say, all right, if you choose this, turn to page X. If you choose this, turn to page Y. And the story was different based off of what you chose. Kind of a cool concept. The 49ers are, quite frankly, they are the white girl in a scary movie. They choose wrong every time. Like that's just what's going on when it comes to the quarterback position. They've done a fantastic job, by the way, building this roster. I don't want to take anything away from them. We've talked about that. We've talked about how we trust them going into this offseason. But frankly, they've dropped the ball in this Jimmy G situation. Not only that, they've dropped the ball really on the quarterback situation all the way through. So let's go back and forth on years here. I'm going to take 2017, where it all started. So if you remember, 49ers came in, they needed a quarterback. They needed a lot of things, quite frankly. And at that time, Kyle Shanahan really wanted to bring in Kirk Cousins. That was the rumor. So they were willing to ride with a bunch of scrubs, figure out their way through the season. So much so, by the way, that it came out going into last year's draft. John Lynch slipped up and said, well, you know, we didn't even really look at Mahomes or Watson because we had a plan in place. Well, that plan was supposed to be Kirk Cousins, right? Problem is they bailed on said plan. 7-8 weeks into the regular season, trade a second rounder for Jimmy Garoppolo, which, okay, at the time, like Jimmy was kind of that deal, right? Like a lot of teams wanted him. The Browns supposedly were willing to give up a lot more. The 49ers were able to get him for a second round pick, and they bailed on what their own plan was. But in the process, they did pass up on Watson and Mahomes, which is fine. Like, I'm not saying that you have to get every draft pick right or that they were wrong for not drafting those guys. What I take issue with here is that they didn't even look at them. That's where the frustration comes in. Like, at least look, kick the tires, show up to pro days, do what you got to do, figure it out, and see if either one of these guys fit your system. But they didn't do that. They didn't even do it with Trubisky, which obviously would have been the wrong choice all along. But they didn't look at any of these guys really. So passing on Watson and Mahomes is one thing, but to not look at them is a completely different thing. Then what really grinds my gears is they traded up to get CJ freaking Beathard for God knows what reason, because he was a Kyle guy. He was really gritty. Kyle really loved him. Couldn't he would have lost sleep if he didn't have this guy on the roster, is what he said. Well, they traded up and got Beathard, who would have easily fallen to him around maybe 2 or 3 later, but they had to have him. So they went and got Beathard. And then also Nick Mullins, undrafted free agent, signed with them that year. From the very beginning, they made the mistakes. Now, we can also talk about Colin Kaepernick a little bit. Regardless of what your political views are, really none of that matters. As a player at that time, was Colin Kaepernick better than the options of quarterback of what they had that year? I would say yes. Easily, yes. So they cut him. They don't even look at Watson Mahomes. They trade up for Beathard, and they sign Nick Mullins as an undrafted free agent. And by the way, trade a second-round pick for Jimmy G, foregoing their own plan to get Kirk Cousins. That's how they started off in this regime. What happened in 2018, Suneil?
Yeah, and are we talking about each year? Or are we just going through the timeline?
Yeah, well, let's just take turns. Go ahead. You can add whatever you want to
Yes.
2017 or throw in 2018, whatever you want.
Yeah, so we'll definitely get into 2018, but when it comes to, I think that the 49, I know you think the 49ers, or your stance is the 49ers have been inept with the quarterback position and always choose the wrong way. I'm not as harsh on with the 49ers decision making when it comes to the 49er, or when it comes to the quarterback, as you are, but I do still think they have made mistakes. And in 2017, obviously in retrospect, Watson Mahomes would be a much better situation than what we are right now. But I put out an article on SI talking about why Watson Mahomes weren't, like, why missing on them wasn't like as bad, because the prototypical Watson Mahomes type players in the past were all very underperforming quarterbacks, like near busts, right? There hadn't really been the mobile quarterback that had turned out to be really good till basically Watson and Mahomes, right? Before that, all of them had been, kind of people that had a lot of upside, but never reached that upside. So I understand why, teams like the 49ers didn't even give them a look, because they had so many more needs there. And then when it comes to the Kirk Cousins versus Jimmy Garoppolo, like you stated, Jimmy Garoppolo was not somebody that anybody thought was available. It was that drama that was going on in New England that caused a guy of Jimmy Garoppolo's caliber to even be available. So you can't really put him into your plan when you didn't even think he was going to be there. So the minute that he did become available, because of how high Belichick was on him and how just the league was high on Jimmy Garoppolo, to go out and get him, they actually were thought of as winners to be able to get that. I remember like Colin Cowherd and a lot of the national media being like, the 49ers got a steal. And it was actually proving the genius of Kyle Shanahan and Lynch at that time, that they went out and made such a prudent move. So I know revisionist history, it's like, yo, why? But in the moment, that was actually thought of as a really great move. But let's move into 2018, because, obviously Jimmy at the tail end of the season went on a, win streak. He won the last, I think 5 games. So, and, the 49ers went from a team that just looked miserable to a team that you're thinking, if Jimmy Garoppolo was the starting quarterback the whole season, maybe they're in the playoffs. And I think the 49ers bought into that, Jesse, because they went out and made Jimmy Garoppolo the highest paid quarterback at that time, giving him a 5-year, $137.5 million contract with $74.1 million guaranteed. And now when you're looking at quarterbacks getting $45, $46 million a year, fully guaranteed, that 5-year 137 doesn't look that bad, but 5-year 137 was nobody was getting paid that at the quarterback position when they gave it to Jimmy, and they gave it to Jimmy literally off of 5 games with the 49ers. So even though when you really broke down the contract a little bit deeper, it was kind of a team-friendly deal. They had a lot of outs in that contract. They just never chose to use them, unfortunately, including it seems like this year. But yeah, I mean, they gave him a deal before he necessarily had to prove what he was capable of, and they signed him. And unfortunately, in 2018, very early on, he went out for the rest of the season. So they paid a guy, gave him a lot of money, and then didn't even get to use him. But the thing that really was the biggest issue for me, Jesse, was the backup quarterbacks, right? So they stuck with CJ Beathard and Nick Mullins, 2 guys that, like you said, I think they reached. I mean, they didn't really reach for Nick Mullins because he was an undrafted free agent. But with CJ Beathard, they reached for him, and then they settled for that being the backup room. And I think that's been the biggest issue and kind of haunted them more than even the Jimmy stuff, Jesse, was the lack of, and this is my biggest criticism of Shanahan, his lack of urgency when it came to finding a reliable backup quarterback, like, plagued this team up until last year, because this team could have been a lot better over the tenure. I think Kyle Shanahan would have had a lot more wins if he was a little more urgent with his backup quarterback position instead of just falling in love with guys and hoping for the best. I wish he would have just went off of what was actually being done and, and got in a proven veteran or somebody that had more of an upside than a Nick Mullins and a CJ Beathard. That for me is, accurate criticism for where they lacked in 2018.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, that's that obviously is a major issue. Rashad says Jimmy was never the same after the ACL injury. Before the ACL, he was fearless, gunslinger. After the ACL, he was always hesitation and lacked confidence. I would disagree. I think that's the problem. He was the same always. Like, he never got better, and maybe the ACL did play into that. I think you're onto something a little bit here. For some reason, in 2020, he was certainly really hesitant. Last year, I felt like he played pretty free, to be real. Like, he rolled out an awful lot. In fact, he almost threw 3 picks in the playoffs, rolling to his right, trying to make these extra plays. We saw the running touchdowns from him, a couple of those this year. So I thought this year he played pretty free. Unfortunately, overall, he's basically the same guy. And for me, I specifically remember after the 2017 season, and obviously I think all of us were excited about the prospect of Jimmy G, maybe overlooked some deficiencies of his. But overall, I mean, I looked at it and said, I think he has an issue with his base. I don't think he stands firm in his base, plants his feet, and fires throws. Often was throwing off a 1 foot, back foot, whatever. Just really bad mechanics from the lower base. Upper body was really, really good, but his base was atrocious, I thought, at times. And that never improved. Like, that always stayed the same. And I figured, you're working with the best. I figured for sure, absolutely, he would fix that. And he just never did. So, to me, I think he's basically in 2021 as the same exact player he was in 2017. And that's where the real issue resides. So as we get into the next year, what was it? 2019, nothing really happened. Obviously, he came back. They went to the Super Bowl, what have you. But right after that Super Bowl, we entered the 2020 season. The 49ers allegedly have a first-round pick sitting there for them from the Patriots, who would love to have Jimmy Garoppolo back. Now, again, is this for sure? No, we don't know for sure. We're not in these rooms, but supposedly have a first-round pick right there waiting for them. And on top of that, have the hometown Tom Brady wanting to finish his career in the red and gold, ready to come to San Francisco, and the 49ers pass on him. Why? Because they saw enough from Jimmy in that Super Bowl run year that he was younger. They didn't know how long Brady would play for, and they thought that Brady was a little bit washed. Now, I can tell you that after watching that Titans playoff game, the Patriots and the Titans, and seeing that Mohamed Sanu was the best option basically for the Patriots, watching Tom Brady throw the ball in that game, I knew he wasn't washed. So the fact that we had a full coaching staff go back and watch film on this guy and come away with, I mean, the difference between him and Jimmy is so minimal. Jimmy's still improving, and Tom Brady's only going to be here for a couple years. The fact that that's what they came away with, a little bit disturbing. I'm not going to lie on that. And if
But
there
just,
was a first
I'm sorry.
round pick also on the table, what the hell are you doing? Anyways, go ahead.
No, I was saying, like, obviously the 49ers probably did see Mohamed Sanu as his best option, and they thought the world of him because they brought him in, that next season to be on the team. So they probably thought, well, if Tom Brady can't get it done with Mohamed Sanu, he's probably washed, right? Because of how high they thought about Mohamed Sanu. But clearly that was the wrong
Yeah.
decision. Yeah, and once again, obviously obviously the difference between Jimmy G and Tom Brady, it seems like, okay, what a dumb move, right? But even more than that move, Jesse, once again, who are our backups going into this season, the 2020 season? Same guys, CJ Beathard, Nick Mullins, same type of situation. So now we're 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 4 years, and you still got Nick Mullins as the next guy up. That's where I look at it. And when we say the ineptness of the 49ers at quarterback, I think it's more a backup problem than just the starter, right? And to me, that's where the criticism with Kyle Shanahan, when you were criticizing him a lot and I was Shanahan, the one thing that I could never argue with you about is the fact that he never upgraded the backup quarterback room till last season. And to me, that's just been the biggest black mark to Kyle Shanahan is that issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is. It's a big issue for sure. Elvis tapping in. Good day from OZ. Love your content and truth, Jesse. Thank you so much, Elvis. Appreciate you. This is the first time I've seen you in the chat, man. So appreciate you tapping in. This is a good a time as any. We've got 245 watching. Make sure that you like, subscribe to the channel. We're definitely not done yet. But while you are here, I know 52% of you watch and actually don't subscribe. So while you're here, subscribe. That would be awesome. And then also in the description of the episode, you've got So Real Sports Talk. The link is right there. What are you approaching now, Suneil? Where are you at?
784, I believe. Last I checked.
784 is very specific. Get this man to 800 tonight if we can. There's enough of you in the chat that are not subscribed to Suneil's channel, So Real Sports Talk. And if you're lazy, the link is in the description. Click on that bad boy, hit subscribe. It's free. It's free to do. It's very easy. Just subscribe. Anyways, let's move on. Actually, I think I had another super chat. Oh, good one here. Innovative Energy. Also, great way, $2. You get the business thrown up here. So anybody who lives in the area of Innovative Energy, look them up. I don't know what they do, but smart play by you. Jimmy Garoppolo to Seattle. The only team with 2 second rounders, John Lynch. Yeah, listen, I don't think 2 second rounders was ever a thing. I think that might be what they were asking for Jimmy. And I think that's where the error comes into play. Maybe I'm wrong on that. It's just a feeling I get. Appreciate you both. Here you go.
Jesse, you know where I think the 2 second rounders go, and I think I saw this from I forget who said it on Twitter, but it's definitely not my idea. But I believe maybe Jimmy G and a player like Jimmy G and Kittle, or Jimmy G and some other guy thrown in, and they were willing to give 2 second rounders, and they just dropped the fact that there was an actual other player attached to that, and they just are like, there was an offer for Jimmy G for 2 seconds. I think that sounds a little more realistic than just straight out for Jimmy G 2 seconds.
Yeah, maybe. I also think that this might be Don Yee's doing. Like, I don't think that Jimmy wants to be here. We're going to talk about this, here in a minute. But I personally don't think that Jimmy wants to be here. And Don Yee's like, hey, listen, they've had offers on the table. Let me just float this out there, get people all pissed off, and get them worked up so we can get Jimmy G cut, which is ultimately probably what they want, so they can decide the next destination. But here we are. All right, you want to jump into what happened last year, Trey Lance draft?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, last year was the first year that the 49ers finally addressed the quarterback room, like in the offseason, or at least like verbally. They said, the issue that we've noticed is we don't have a strong enough quarterback room to stay competitive when our quarterbacks go down injured. And technically, like everything we've been talking about, the past 4 years up until this point. So they obviously earmarked some picks to be able to go out there and upgrade their room. I think they were ready to move off of Jimmy. I think they had those 3 first-rounders earmarked to go to Houston for Deshaun Watson. Yet, unfortunately, Deshaun Watson off the field issues happened, so they couldn't pull the trigger on that trade. Then the next guy up was Matt Stafford, right? So then Kyle Shanahan is in Mexico, partying it up over there, sees Matt Stafford, says, hey, you should be our quarterback. I love you, all this kind of stuff. Matt Stafford gives him the whole, sup, dog? Yeah, you and me. We could make this happen. All the while, he's over there with McVay, chilling in cabanas, all that kind of stuff. Comes out, the Rams go get Matt Stafford, offload all that money that Goff had for them, making, obviously making their team better. They go off and win a Super Bowl. Wah, wah, right? So then they are like, all right, we couldn't get Deshaun Watson. This is a pretty strong draft for quarterbacks. Let's go be players for quarterbacks in this draft. And they're like, okay, we'll trade 2 first rounds to move up to the third pick in the draft. And we're going to go select what everybody thinks is going to be Mac Jones, right? On the day before the draft, they're like, oh, we're hearing all this stuff is going on with Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers. Let us call Green Bay and see if maybe Aaron Rodgers is available, even though we have no more trade assets because we just traded everything to go to the 3rd round draft pick. Obviously, Green Bay says no. And so they end up picking Trey Lance, which I don't necessarily think is a mistake because I think Trey Lance is a really, really great quarterback and is going to be the future of the 49ers for a very, very long time. And we're blessed to have him. However, the windy road they took to get to Trey Lance that year is, a little bit confusing. But I don't only blame the 49ers for it. I think they had really good plans in place because if we did get Deshaun Watson and he didn't have the off the field issues, all of us aren't worried about quarterback anymore. But things happened. They had to pivot a bunch of times. And even though I do think they got it right, it definitely was, I guess, stressful to say the least.
Yeah, well, I'll say that. I think this is a great comment. Great Tone 765 says, send Jimmy to Seattle for a 5th. That's 4 extra interceptions for Fred Warner. That is comment of the show, my friend. If there was an award every show, you would have won it. That is really funny. Let's also not forget that they had a couple options when it came to Jimmy as well. They could have cut Jimmy, right? Mm-hmm. They could have then saved that money last year, rolled it over to this year, and be sitting on roughly $50 million to play with. I'd say that'd be helpful right about now, right? That was an option they had. They could have traded Jimmy before the draft. Supposedly they had like a 3rd or a 2nd on the table again from New England. Pass that up. And they could have had a legitimate quarterback competition. They did none of those things. They just straight played Jimmy Garoppolo. We saw the results. Obviously, they made an NFC championship. They did the pump and dump, as Grant likes to call it, try to pump up Jimmy's trade value. And that brings us to now, where you basically had one assignment this offseason. That was trade Jimmy Garoppolo. You 49ers, San Francisco 49ers, told us that Jimmy is not a future franchise quarterback. You did so many times by sniffing around all the bushes in the neighborhood before you finally landed on Trey Lance as your future. And then you tried to sell Jimmy Garoppolo as an option to be a franchise guy around the NFL. That has not worked, whether that's due to injury, whether that's due to lack of getting any offers, whether that's due to the 49ers probably wanting too much for him, which is what I think is going on. But ultimately, you had one thing to do, and you have somehow figured out how to blow. I'm not going to say it wasn't pocket rockets or pocket kings by any stretch. Like Jimmy G's not that good, but I would say you went into, if you're a poker player, you went into everything with pocket tens, pretty good hand. And then the flop came out, by the way. You saw another 10. So now you've got 3 tens on the board, looking really good. All you had to do is once that window of Wentz getting traded happened, and then you had this couple days before the Watson domino fell, that was your opportunity to go to the Colts, go to the Steelers, play them against each other, get the best offer, and get rid of Jimmy G. But you didn't do that. You still have Jimmy G. Now, every other team in the whole league has a quarterback except for the Panthers, who supposedly want nothing to do with Baker Mayfield. So why would they want Jimmy Garoppolo? And the Seattle Seahawks, which, come on, we know that they're not going to take Jimmy. So here we are. Jimmy Garoppolo is still on this roster. They can't cut him right now because that's $7.5 million that they don't get back until next offseason. So now they've got to play this game of hoping that a quarterback gets injured, a team gets desperate, they can trade him, or waiting until he passes a physical to cut him and let him go be a backup somewhere else. Or there's a third option, which Suneil has been trying to sell all of you on. So when you subscribe to his channel, make sure you don't watch those past videos, and then maybe you'll be past all of that going forward. But what is that third option, Suneil? You're muted.
So first of all, I got to put in the chat right now that Jesse is a hater because that isn't accurate at all. I'm not trying to sell anything. I do sales for my whole life outside of this stream. I'm not trying to sell anything right now. I believe this is what the 49ers are going to do based off of just what they haven't done. And like I said, last year, they made it a big effort to make it a point that the quarterback room is extremely important. And that doesn't just change the next year that all of a sudden now the quarterback room isn't very important. They always needed to upgrade their backup quarterback. And they did that when they brought in Trey Lance. And they haven't done that because all they have now is Nate Sudfeld. And Nate Sudfeld's career reminds me a lot of CJ Beathard and Nick Mullins. It doesn't remind me of, any of these potential, star, quote unquote, backup quarterbacks that could come in and win you a game or two in a very competitive NFC, that a game or two lost because your starting quarterback is there could be the difference between winning a division and not making the playoffs, right? So Nate Sudfeld just isn't that dude to me, Jesse. So what I believe that the 49ers are doing by hedging their bets based off of the fact that they didn't go off of Tyrod Taylor, they didn't go after Jacoby Brissett, they didn't bring in any of these type of guys, is that they're looking at Jimmy as possibly the backup. And the way that they're going to be able to do that is extend him instead of giving him 1 year, $25.5 million, give him maybe a 3-year, $34-35 million contract where they could save about $10 million to this year on the cap. And now his per year goes from $25 million in a year to maybe 10 to 13 million. And this solves a couple of problems, Jesse, because right now, what are we seeing as far as the reports as to why guys aren't trading for Jimmy? They're afraid about the shoulder. So if Jimmy comes into training camp, shows that, the shoulder's still good, plays a few preseason games, plays a little bit in the season when Trey Lance is, blown out teams. He comes in the third, fourth quarter to just showcase him a little bit in the offense. And then the minute a player goes down, a star quarterback or a starting quarterback for a contending team goes down, like it does every single year, Jesse. Every single year, a starting quarterback for a contending team goes down. Jimmy Garoppolo now plays that Sam Bradford role where you can go in, get like a Band-Aid solution. And now instead of eating a $25 million contract, it's a $10 to $13 million contract that's easier to trade. It's more of a need, so you'll probably get more assets for it. And I don't think there's going to be much of a competition in training camp when Jimmy can't throw for the past 4 months and Trey Lance is working his butt off in Orange County with Beck and crew, just becoming a better player. So that's just what I think. I'm thinking like what I think the 49ers are going to do. Is that what I want to do? Jesse, what did I want to do the minute they traded for Lance? I came on this show and I said, get rid of Jimmy, right? I've been on get rid of Jimmy for 2 years. I'm trying not to be emotional. I'm trying to start thinking like the team and bring you some of those things so that people aren't just surprised when it happens. Just know you heard it here first. I'm warning you guys. This is what I think they're going to do.
5 stages of grief. You're in acceptance. Stop it. Stop it. Not too late. This comment here made a mistake by drafting Lance. Fields was the QB in the draft. He had big time experience. Lance is too raw. I hate to rehash it, but I'm going to real quick. I'll just break it down for you. Why Lance was the right choice over Justin Fields. All right, here we go. Trey Lance played in a college system that was extremely verbose, big playbook. By the way, the year that he wasn't playing, the way that North Dakota State gets their quarterbacks ready is the backup quarterback, in this situation, Trey Lance, goes through all the game installs just as if he was the starter. So he basically prepares as if he's the starting quarterback, even though he is not that. Once he became the starter, he goes through a verbose playbook, not one of those where he claps behind the center in a hurry-up offense, looks over to the sideline, they're holding up a chart, and he figures out his play. No, he has to actually go through the verbiage. He then played under center, I believe, 39% of the snaps. And by the way, called his own audibles, protections, everything. So I understand this school, by the way, which every chance they've had to play an FBS school, they've won that game. Just because those teams will not play North Dakota State does not mean that he's not ready for the next stage. A lot of players have been coming out of North Dakota State as of late. They've been pretty damn good on the next level. Trey Lance was absolutely the right pick all the way through. What I said it all last offseason, was kind of out on an island with that. Very few people, but Trey Lance for sure was the right choice. He will prove that going forward. Now, when it comes to this current situation, the only issue I take with that, well, I take a few issues with that, but the biggest issue I take is I don't understand how the 49ers can look at this knowing that it's Jimmy Garoppolo's team. Like, it, quite frankly, if Jimmy Garoppolo's there, it's his team. Listen to what Eric Armstead said at, I think it was the halftime show, pregame, postgame, whatever, at the Warriors game. They asked him about Jimmy G. He and the other veterans on this team associate Jimmy Garoppolo with winning. Okay. They think Jimmy Garoppolo is the reason that they are winning. So, with that being said, you cannot bring this guy back, have it be a competition or whatever you want to do, because, first of all, if they name Trey the starter, which they quite possibly may not do based off of everything I just said, you've got Trey looking over his shoulder every single step of the way. Anytime he plays bad, it's going to be an issue. Like, also think about it like this, Suneil. Last preseason, you remember when George Kittle got super frustrated with the Trey Lance questions? Like, during the preseason, before the season had even started, I think it was before the Charger game when they were going back and forth in that little mini camp before they played him, and he got super frustrated with a Trey Lance question. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. So that was preseason. Then you had a whole season of being asked these same questions. Then again, this offseason, these players are being asked this same freaking question. And you can see how irritated these players get with that question. Now you want to put them through that again for a whole nother season and expect that no way it impacts their mentality, their camaraderie, or any of that. I'm just not buying it. That's what worries me, by the way, Sunil. This whole talk that we've had for the last 40 minutes or so was basically for me to say the 49ers have screwed this up since 2017. So now they've got the obvious choice, which is make sure Jimmy Garoppolo is not on this roster by the time he gets healthy. The very least, you have to cut him, get rid of the contract, get rid of the problem before it becomes one. And the 49ers are going to choose wrong. I think you're right. I think we probably do have to get ready for that scenario because that's probably what they're going to do. It's the only wrong decision, and that's the decision that they're going to make because they're the 49ers and they cannot figure out how to get the quarterback position right at all.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think people don't want to separate the fact that this is not what I would want to do. This is just what I think realistically is going to happen. I would have much rather them sign a guy like Tyrod Taylor, a Jacoby Brissett, get that upgraded backup quarterback over Nate Sudfeld, and traded Jimmy for a second or a third or whatever it was that they would have gotten, just so it's a clean break. Because I do think that Trey Lance is going to be much better than Jimmy Garoppolo, even if they did do any type of quarterback competition. I do understand it's much easier of a split if Jimmy Garoppolo just isn't on the team. But if I'm looking at the makeup of the team, Nate Sudfeld as the backup quarterback doesn't make me feel very comfortable because we did see Trey get nicked up last season. It's inevitable in this type of game, especially with a guy who's a mobile quarterback like Trey Lance. There is an opportunity for him to get nicked up a game or two here or there. And if we're looking for the 49ers to stay competitive, if we're looking for the 49ers to still make the playoffs and have deep runs, that backup quarterback can be make or break. And it's just not that for Nate. For me, Nate Sudfeld isn't that. So I would much rather have Jimmy than Nate Sudfeld as my backup. That's all I'm saying. I do understand all of those possible negatives as far as the locker room and all that kind of stuff. But just like you said, man, the 49ers brass didn't make the right move. They should have gotten a backup quarterback. They should have traded Jimmy Garoppolo a long time ago. But the shoulder surgery came out. They didn't. Now all those backups are traded or signed with other teams. And we're stuck with another confusing situation that, to use a word that we talked about a few years ago, stressful.
To say the least. Marco says, feels like 2023 all-in strategy, opting for a strategic punt in 2022. Yeah, it does kind of feel that way. But the 49ers are going to be very competitive. We did map that out, regardless of what happens with this situation. As long as they don't start Jimmy G, they'll be good to go. But I appreciate the comment. Here you go, man. Mike's still hanging on hope, man. He's talking about the NFL rumors, Twitter, that the 49ers have not pulled the trigger on 2 second-round picks. Listen, what team is offering 2 second-round picks?
What team still needs a starter?
There's 2 teams that need a quarterback at this point. One of them is the Panthers. They have no second-round picks this year, so it's not them. The other one is the Seahawks. We really think the Seahawks are offering 2 second-round picks for Jimmy Garoppolo? Like, this team is in complete blow-up and rebuild mode. There is no way. And if it was offered for any reason and they decline that, it just goes back to being how inept the 49ers are when it comes to the quarterback situation. I wish that it was there, but we've kind of seen what the market would be. Jimmy Garoppolo has an injury right now. We just saw a better quarterback in Matt Ryan go for simply a third. We also saw Carson Wentz go for 2/3 and a swap of a second. If the 49ers had 2 seconds on the table, they would have pulled the trigger. They would have had to have pulled the trigger. I think realistically, again, that is what the 49ers were hoping to get. They went into it very bullish, saying, hey, this is what we're expecting. When they didn't get that, they turned down these deals, whatever they were offered. And that's why they're here. So for me, I think that's probably more realistic. Maybe they were offered a second, like Middlecoff says, maybe not. But to me, that's kind of the feeling that I get, is that they wanted 2 second-round picks. They didn't get that, and then they punted on trading them. Fernando says, do you think we could see another QB controversy? I think that's kind of what we're telling you, is that we definitely could see that. Obviously, it's the wrong way to go. You certainly should not go that route. But we both kind of believe that the 49ers screw this up. So, yeah, I definitely could see another quote unquote controversy for sure. Yeah, go ahead.
The one thing that I think could save this, there is an out. Let me bring some positivity to what I think could possibly be the move. That
Hold
I
on,
think
let's leave it as a teaser.
Go.
I'm going to play this and then you can do it afterwards.
You ready for this?
I'm putting my hands up to the screen because I want to feel the fire that's about to be said. Come on.
Panthers, 49ers, swap quarterbacks, right? So we get Sam Darnold. They take Jimmy and his whole contract. Maybe a future second or a future third, something like that, because I know Carolina doesn't have a lot of picks this season. But that solves a couple of problems, right? So now we get to save about $7 or $8 million on the cap, because Sam Darnold's $18 million versus Jimmy G's $25.5 million. We do upgrade our backup role, because I think Sam Darnold is still a better quarterback than Nate Sudfeld. It's only for 1 year, so his money comes off the books next year, so we don't have to worry about extending Jimmy to make his money work. That money just comes directly off of the books. And if Sam Darnold ends up being like somebody who fits in with the team and all that kind of stuff, he could be the long-term backup quarterback for the 49ers and be that kind of guy, since it seems like he's not going to be a starter in the league anymore. So I think that could be kind of the scenario that is the saving grace. I think Carolina would like that, because they get off of Sam Darnold, because I'm sure all the drama we're talking about, they're feeling the same thing with Sam Darnold over there. And, it could just be a fresh start for both quarterbacks. There won't be any locker room drama, because, nobody knows Sam Darnold. They're not going to be like, Sam Darnold should start over Trey. And I think that just solves everything, and something that is a realistic option that I think the team should look into.
Most people don't like what you're saying. Some people want to throw tomatoes, but Matthew does like what you're saying. Okay, let me clarify this for people, and this is why I like what you're saying. Now, let's be clear. We're not saying that this is what we want to do or what he wants to do. What he's saying is, if the other option is bringing back Jimmy G, dividing the locker room, paying him the $27 million, then what he just laid out is a much better option. Because let's say they give you a third round next year that could escalate to a 2 based off of how Jimmy Garoppolo plays. You save yourself the money. You've got a good backup quarterback. For everything we say about Darnold, like, he's a backup quarterback in this league, right? You've saved yourself around $8 million. You've picked up an extra draft pick. You may have your future backup quarterback for a long term. And if not, it's only a 1-year deal. No big deal. Not that big of a deal. Darnold is expensive, but he's not as expensive as Jimmy G. So, like, that's actually a pretty decent.
These guys don't want to see reason. I get it.
I don't think it's that bad. I don't think it's that bad. It's better than bringing back Jimmy G. Now, do I want that to be what they do? No, of course. I would be disappointed if that's the route they ended up going, but it's better than the latter. Like, to me, it's certainly better than the latter. M9er says there is no chance Jimmy will accept being the backup. I got news for you. If Jimmy gets cut at any point, he's most likely the backup somewhere else.
He
So
might not even be on a
he
roster.
may not have a choice, just to be real. But to be fair, M9er, I do kind of agree with this comment. As far as being a backup on the 49ers, I think that is probably worst case scenario, right? Like you've got a locker room full of guys that you've ridden to a Super Bowl and an NFC championship with, guys that ride for you. I think that's a little bit unfair and embarrassing to now be the backup after watching a whole year go through, being a good soldier, being a good teammate, going through the whole Trey situation, and now you're this kid's backup. Like I tend to agree. I don't know how much he would accept that role with the 49ers, even if that is his fate this year with another team. Kind of on board with that. And I would agree with that. I don't think it would be the right move at all. But I appreciate the contribution. Here you go, brother. All right, Suneil, we went a good hour strong talking about how inept the 49ers are with the quarterback position. I did not expect it to take that long, but we did a good job breaking it down. Appreciate you, as always, for joining me here on Tuesday nights. Make sure that you subscribe, hit the bell notification so you never miss an episode. Also, make sure you subscribe to, I see another super chat. Make sure you subscribe to Suneil's channel. The link is in the description. So get him to 800 tonight if you can. That would be awesome. We're pushing 5,000 here at Last Second Sports. Appreciate all the love that you give. It is free to subscribe. So tap in, show us love. If you enjoyed any part of the show tonight, 49 Glory says Fields would have beaten the Niners if not for Debo's heroics. Lance did not look like a pro QB in his first. Okay. All right. This. Oh, geez. Here we go. Okay.
Get him.
Here's what I'll say. First of all, appreciate the contribution. Appreciate you for tapping in. But no, just joking. No. I appreciate it. I really do. But here's what I'll say. Do you remember Justin Fields' first start? Like this guy had, I think it was -6 passing yards for a whole game. Not just like, oh, he played sparingly. No, his first full start, he had negative passing yards. Now, did Trey Lance look like a world beater against Arizona? No. But if you remember, that was his first start against a team that was 5-0 at the time and no George Kittle on the road in a pretty pressure situation. Trey Lance played pretty damn good when you really compare that to some of the other guys in their first starts, namely Justin Fields. And in his second start, by the way, he had a better game than any other of the rookie quarterbacks in start number 2. In fact, when you look at the QBR or the passer rating, it was higher than all the other rookie quarterbacks except for Davis Mills had 1 game higher and Mac Jones had 3 games higher, but it took both of them 10 starts to get that high as he did in start number 2. So I think this is a little bit of revisionist history. I think you're forgetting that Justin Fields looked really, really bad in his first start, about as bad as you can actually look. Again, negative passing yards for a full game. Yes, he looked really good in that 49er game. I'm not taking anything away from him. I think Justin Fields is going to be okay. Like, I don't think he's a bad player, but I stand by Trey Lance absolutely being the right pick. No doubt about it. But appreciate your opinion for sure. Let me show you some love and then we'll get out of here. All right, Suneil, appreciate you again for being part of the show. I'll see you next week, brother. You have a good week. And for everybody else tapping in, I'll be on with Grant tomorrow and then the call-in show right after that, right here, Last Second Sports. Peace.